Have you ever noticed this frustrating pattern? You know the grammar rules? You know hundreds of words. You can read and write without a problem. But the exact moment someone asks you a question in English, your brain completely stalls. For 3 or 4 agonizing seconds, your mind goes blank. Behind that silence, a frantic internal translation machine is working overtime. You are hearing English, converting it into your native language, figuring out what you want to say in your native language, translating it back into English, and finally speaking. If this sounds exhausting, it is because it is. And I want to tell you a very hard truth about why you are still stuck. Every single time you translate in your head, you are actively training your brain to stay blocked. Human brains are efficiency machines. When you force your mind to translate, you are treating English like a foreign code book that requires a decoder ring, rather than a living language. Psychologically, your brain treats the foreign language as a threat or an extreme cognitive burden, triggering a microstress response that makes fluid speech almost impossible. Today, we are going to fix that. We are going to look at why translation destroys your fluency, examine a powerful psychological shift, and break down exact, practical techniques to train your brain to think directly in English without the middleman. Let's dive in. The core problem: why translation destroys fluency. To understand why translation is holding you back, we first need to look at how real fluency works in the human brain. When native speakers or advanced fluent speakers talk, they do not assemble sentences like puzzle pieces. They retrieve prefabricated chunks of language. They access concepts and ideas directly through neural pathways linked to the sound and meaning of the words, not through a translation bridge. When you rely on translation, 3 major issues destroy your progress. The speed bottleneck. Human speech moves at roughly 150 to 200 words per minute. The cognitive processing required to translate back and forth takes up massive amounts of working memory. By the time your brain finishes translating your thoughts into English, the conversation has already moved on, or you have lost your confidence. The grammar trap. Every language has its own unique sentence structure, idioms, and conceptual phrasing. When you translate literally from your native tongue, you end up constructing sentences that sound robotic, unnatural, or grammatically awkward to a native listener. You might be saying words correctly, but you are not communicating naturally. The emotional hesitation. Translation breeds perfectionism. Because you are translating word for word, you become terrified of making a mistake. That hesitation triggers self-doubt, leading to long pauses, filler words, and the dreaded mental freeze. Breaking this habit requires a fundamental shift in how you process information. You have to stop treating English as a subject you study and start treating it as an environment you inhabit. The story of the 2 navigators. This brings me to a story that completely changed how I look at language acquisition. Centuries ago, 2 groups of explorers set out to map a vast, uncharted continent separated from their homeland by a massive mountain range. The first group was led by a brilliant cartographer named Julian. Julian was a master of systems. Before his team took a single step, he built an elaborate, painstaking grid system. Every single tree, river, and rock they encountered in the new land was carefully cataloged, measured, and cross-referenced against the maps of their home country. Whenever they wanted to find a landmark, they would consult their master translation chart, match the foreign terrain to a familiar landmark back home, and then calculate their position. At first, Julian's team felt safe. They had complete control. But as they pushed deeper into the dense interior of the continent, the terrain became wilder and more complex. The translation charts grew impossibly thick. Every time they encountered a new valley, they spent hours flipping pages, trying to find an equivalent back home. Eventually, when winter hit, a sudden storm rolled in. To survive, they needed to make split-second decisions to find shelter. But while they were busy, cross-referencing their charts and translating the terrain, the freezing wind caught them off guard. They were paralyzed by their own system. Meanwhile, the second group was led by a pragmatic explorer named Elena. Elena took a radically different approach. Before crossing the mountains, she instructed her team to leave their home maps behind entirely. As soon as they entered the new continent, she blindfolded them to their past references. She forced them to learn the names of the rivers by hearing the actual sound of the water, to recognize the danger of the cliffs by the immediate sight of the drop, and to communicate using the sounds and signs of the local tribes they met along the way. When the winter storm hit Elena's team, they didn't stop to translate or consult a grid. Their bodies reacted instinctively to the environment. They moved with the terrain, because they had stopped viewing it through the lens of somewhere else. They had learned to live inside the reality they were in. The lesson from the story. The lesson here is simple, yet profound. Julian's team represents how most students approach English. You are carrying a massive, heavy translation map in your head, trying to cross-reference every single thought back to your native language. It works fine for slow, controlled exercises, but the moment real life happens, the moment a conversation speeds up, your system crashes under the weight of its own complexity. Elena's team represents true fluency. When you stop translating, you drop the map. You start responding directly to the concepts, sounds, and rhythms of English. You stop looking for equivalents and start building direct neural pathways. So how do we actually build Elena's method into your daily life? Let's look at the exact techniques. Practical techniques to think in English. You do not need to move abroad or spend thousands of dollars on immersive programs to train your brain. You can start reprogramming your cognitive pathways right now using these targeted techniques. 1. Environmental labeling and object association. Environmental labeling and object association. Stop translating labels in your room or office into your native language. When you look at a coffee mug, do not say the word in your native language and translate it. Look at the mug, visualize the object, and say the word mug directly in your mind. Take it a step further. Narrate your immediate physical actions in simple English phrases throughout the day. I am opening the door. I am pouring water. The water is hot. Keep it simple, but keep it direct. The monologue technique, stream of consciousness. Spend 5 minutes every single day talking to yourself out loud in English about what you are currently doing, feeling, or planning. The golden rule here is simple. Do not correct yourself and do not stop. If you do not know a specific word for an object, describe it using simpler English words. For example, if you forget the word refrigerator, describe it as the cold box in the kitchen where food stays fresh. This forces your brain to stay inside English rather than breaking state to search for a translation. Conceptual chunking, not word-for-word vocabulary. When you learn new vocabulary, Never write down a translation next to the English word. Instead, learn the word inside a full phrase or pair it with an image or emotion. If you learn the word exhausted, do not translate it. Associate it with the physical feeling of collapsing onto a bed after a 12-hour workday. By linking words directly to experiences and concepts, you bypass the native language bridge entirely. 4. The English-only mental bubble. Designate specific blocks of time, even if it is just 10 minutes a day, where your internal monologue must switch entirely to English. When you plan your grocery list, think about it in English. When you daydream or reflect on your day before going to sleep, force your inner voice to narrate the thoughts in English. At first, your brain will resist and try to revert. Push through that resistance. That mental friction is the exact feeling of your neural pathways expanding.
Conclusion.
Thinking in English is not a magical talent you are either born with or not. It is a physical skill, no different than learning to ride a bike or playing an instrument. It requires breaking an old, comfortable habit of translation and replacing it with direct, immersive engagement. Here is your challenge for today. Pick just one technique we talked about, either the 5-minute daily monologue or the environmental labeling, and commit to it for the next 7 days. Drop the translation map, trust your ability to learn from the environment, and watch how fast your fluency unlocks. This video helped shift your perspective. Hit that subscribe button and turn on notifications for English elevation, so you never miss a step in your fluency journey. In the comments below, let me know, what is one daily habit where you catch yourself translating the most? Drop it in the comments and I'll personally reply with a tip on how to break it. Thank you for watching, keep practicing, and I will see you in the next lesson.